Hey everyone, I made this video to talk about TPRs, or Total Physical Responses. You might be wondering what they are and why we use them. Well, first of all, I'll start off by describing what they are. TPRs are certain gestures that we use with our hands, our arms, or our faces to help us get points across. Now, the reason we use them is to help us avoid difficult sentences, fractured sentences, or bombarding students with too much information. If we can use simple gestures to help get our point across, it can make our classes a lot more clear, help us save time, and also streamline the whole process. This, in the end, will help us complete our classes on time, avoid wasting unnecessary time on explaining things to students, and just help the class run quite smoothly. When I use TPRs or certain sentence structures in my classes, I like to repeat them again and again. If you switch it up too often, it can be confusing for the students, and it's difficult for them to grasp what you're trying to say and why you're trying to say it. So if you're using a certain sentence structure, such as, "What do you like?" Don't try to switch it up too much and say, "What do you love?" or "What do you prefer?" Just stick to one sentence, particularly the sentence structure that they're using in that lesson plan. If you switch too often, it can be confusing for the students. Some of the TPRs that I like to use regularly are listen, look, and say. So these ones kind of get the students engaged. If I know that there's something I want them to listen to look at, or to say, I'll use those TPRs. This will immediately tell the students it's time for them to act, time for them to look at the screen and pay attention. Other TPRs you can stream together in a sentence, such as, do you like? And then you can add any sort of verb to the end of that. So, do you like eating? Once students become familiar with these TPRs, it's easy for them to recognize them, and they'll respond quite quickly, and they'll associate the words with those physical responses. Other TPRs that you can use to help get your point across are think, sound, or read. So if I want to ask a student, what do you think? It's easy for me to ask that question, even though it can be a complicated question for beginner students. Another thing I can say is, can you read? Or what do you hear? Using these responses help my classes go really smoothly. Once you become really comfortable using them, it becomes second nature, and you stop thinking about it in class. Another thing to pay attention to is the pace of your class and your speaking. So when I'm talking to my students, I'm typically talking slower than I normally do. This is because the students need time to comprehend everything that you're saying. So when I speak to my students, I really slow down my speech, and I make sure my TPRs are slow as well. If I do it too fast, such as, what do you think? It might go right over their heads, and then you'll have to repeat it again, and that just wastes time in your class. But if you can do it slowly, what do you think? The students will have time to hear and comprehend everything that you're saying. Another important thing to remember is that a lot of these students have never engaged with a foreign teacher before. You might be the first foreigner that some of these students are ever talking to. Some of these students are also quite young, so they're going to be shy talking to a foreigner for their first time. Another thing too is that Chinese teaching style can be quite different than North American teaching style. So anything that you can do to sort of lighten the mood in your class and make these kids feel more comfortable can go a long way and get them talking quite a bit. Some of the fun things I like to do to reward my students is give them thumbs up, give them the silly glasses, different things like that. This gets the students laughing, makes them more relaxed, and then they're more willing to speak more in class, which is great, and that's the best way to get them to learn. Another thing to note is that TPRs not only help us avoid difficult words or sentence structures, but they can also help us elicit the correct response that we want from students. So for example, a lot of teachers have difficulty getting students to respond in full sentences. what we always want to avoid yes and no questions. So when we're looking for responses from students, we want to make sure that they're giving us a complete sentence. So what I like to do in my classes, if a student is only responding with one word, I want to make sure that they respond with a full sentence. And in order to get the student to do that, I have some different techniques that I like to use. So for example, if I ask a student, "What do you like to eat?" I want the student to reply by saying, "I like to eat chocolate." But sometimes the students will only reply by saying chocolate. That's not a satisfactory response. So if a student responds by saying chocolate, I'll respond by giving them an example of what a good response should sound like. And when I do that, I count it out on my fingers. So I go, "I like to eat chocolate." And then I'll hold the fingers up like that to the camera. And then I'll ask the student again, "What do you like to eat?" This way the student knows that the response is going to require 5 words. And as the student says the words, I'll drop my fingers. So the student will say, "I like to eat chocolate." This way, the student clearly sees that he needs to give a 5-word response in order to make a clear sentence. Sometimes the student might give a half sentence. So they might say, "I eat chocolate," or something like that. And you want them to say, "I like to eat chocolate." So you can also do this motion. And that's kind of a stretching motion that I do with my fingers. By doing this, that tells the student, "Okay, you're almost there, but we need a little bit more." Hopefully, these TPRs can help you in your class, help you save time, and make your classes more interesting. Finally, something that we can use that isn't necessarily TPRs, but are certain things that help us encourage the learning process, are certain props or flashcards. Certain flashcards, such as ones with colors, numbers, or pictures on them, can really help us. If you look over your lesson plan before the lesson starts, you can decide which flashcards you want to use in the class, and then they're ready on hand on your desk in front of you. When you encounter a new word, color, or something that the student's not able to pronounce or understand, you can quickly draw up your flashcard and show that to the student. That way, you don't have to flip through looking for the right slide or find out some way to describe it. Another thing that's really good to use are puppets. So we use puppets quite often. The ones that fit over your hand are really good because you can do the hand and mouth motion with it. That way, the students sometimes can feel like they're talking to a puppet. This makes them feel really comfortable, and they quite enjoy it because no longer are they talking to a foreign teacher, but now they're talking to an animal, and it kind of gets them more relaxed and they're having a fun time. A lot of these things you can buy locally. You don't have to go shopping around to get them. You can go to your thrift store, a teacher's supply store, a dollar store, or even on Amazon. I find that they're all really cheap and easy to find, and if you use them, they contribute a lot to your class and they help your classes run quite smoothly. If you have anything you'd like to share with us, please feel free. You can post stuff on Facebook, you can ask us questions through WeChat, or even throw some suggestions at us. We'd love to hear back from you. Any sorts of tips or tricks that you use in your classroom, we'd love to hear about them and share it with the rest of our teaching community. Thanks for your time. See you soon.